well, I know you really love the revision process, and that's just a part of your process, and you always end up rewriting your books, and I just know that that's what you like to do. And I was like, Jesus Christ, I hate it. I don't love it. I just have to do it because otherwise it sucks really bad.
Oh man. I'm Mary Elizabeth Summer, and I wrote the Trust Me series. Yeah, so I have to revise a lot because I'm a pantser, which, if you guys know what that is, it's when you write by the seat of your pants as opposed to having an outline. And so I've discovered through talking to other writers that if you ascribe to the pantser model, and in my case, because I don't really have much of a choice, I don't know how to play. That's terrible, especially for a mystery writer. But what you have to do a lot of then is revise. So I have a love-hate relationship with revising. I'm glad that it exists because I need it. And sometimes I get really overwhelmed by the idea of it, like if I have to do like a total rewrite. But sometimes, like once I start going down that path, I realize it seemed like it was going to be a big deal, but it turned out it was just a couple of sentences I had to change and it was fine.
I've never had that. Ever. Well, okay. Not to interrupt everything, but when I was writing A Million Suns, which is a murder mystery in space, my edit letter says, just like this much of a little line, and she said something like, you know, what if you did this instead of this? And I was like, okay, well, shit, that's a much better idea than what I had. And I had to rewrite the whole thing, and I turned it in, and my editor was like, why did you rewrite so much of it? And I was like, just pull one thread.
Yeah.
It's a ripple effect. You do one thing and everything shifts.
Yeah.
So my name is Thao. I'm an agent at the Standard Director Learning Agency, and I am not a writer, so I don't have that experience with having to rewrite or fix draft. I'm usually the one asking for it.
Exactly. She's here for your exaggerating.
But I love revising with my clients. I don't know if they feel they want to I can put holes in your story.
That's also necessary.
So I guess I'll be here to talk about the agent point of view and, you know, why we inflict such pain and torture on all.
Sorry, I didn't give her an outline, so that's useful. So I would love it if we would all talk a bit like about our revision process in a nutshell, and for Thao, how you approach it with your clients. And we can go in any order, anyone who just wants to desperately talk about it.
I guess my revision process is that, like, I try to draft the whole thing. I really try to turn off my inner editor and just draft the whole thing. But I tend to get to, like, about a third of the way through the book and then have to go back to the beginning because I'm like, oh, darn. I really should add this character, and then I cannot move forward until the beginning part is done. So I end up, like, revising the first third of the book a couple times before actually finishing the drafting. But then when I go to actually revise it, I usually do a pass myself of just the big picture stuff. Like, I try to do kind of a reverse outline because I cannot outline, you know, going into it. But once I have the draft, I can reverse outline, which is kind of like making a murder board, if you know what that is from like crime cathedrals. I'll reverse engineer the whole thing so I figure out like where things happen when and what beats are currently, and then so like I have a spreadsheet kind of a thing, and then I can see like, you know, like, oh look, there's like 10 chapters where I don't even advance the mystery at all, and so that really helps me to like even those things out. So I call it my storyboard or my murder board or something, and I like do that, and then I try to like fix the big stuff. Then I'll send it to my critique partners, and they will give me more big stuff, lots of big stuff, and I'll fix that. And then I'll start worrying more about like the wording and things like that. So
I have found that I work really well with a list. So once I finish the draft, I'm also a pantser, so usually I don't plan. I'm starting to do more outlining and planning. But what I do when I finish my draft is I make a list, and it's just 2 columns on a piece of paper. And on the left side, I go chapter by chapter and I write like a 1-sentence summary that happens in every chapter. And then on the right side, I kind of make notes on what needs to be better, because I sometimes will fall into this hole of writing a whole chapter about the world building aspect or something like that, and I'm like, wait, that's super boring. So that's where I kind of rearrange everything, and I draw little arrows, and then I tackle that. And then when my editor gets it, we get what's called an edit letter, and it's like these big picture changes of things that we need to have. Or when my agent gets it, she'll give me notes on the big picture things. The first thing I do is I cross out all the compliments. Like everyone tries to be super nice and they give you these compliments.
I believe them. And then
I do.
Write it out without. Yeah.
Oh, I'm not smart enough to do that. I just print the whole letter and then take a black Sharpie and I take out all the compliments because I don't care. I just want to know what's wrong. And then I pull out the stuff that needs to be fixed.
We don't believe them anyway.
I know, right? Yeah. You're just like, okay, you're correct. So I just take out all the things that need to be fixed and I make a list on one side, and then on the other side I try to like figure out how to fix it to fix that problem. It's been my experience that whenever an editor makes a suggestion of how to change something, like, oh, you need to make this character have blonde hair, or be a rocket scientist, or whatever. Like, whenever they give you the suggestion of, like, specifically how to change it, they're wrong.
Yeah.
But what they're right about is that something needs to be changed. So half of that is, like, interpreting why she made this suggestion or what needs to be fixed, and then I apply it. And cry a lot.
I call that my planned attack phase.
Ooh.
I do it with every edit letter too, very similar.
I need to give it a name like that. That might make
It's
me
like
feel
what I
better about
write
it.
in my schedule.
I
Like,
call it
plan of attack.
The incessantly crying and drinking phase. Maybe if I'm like, attack, that's better than
I am just the messiest writer. I wish that I was more efficient, and every book has been a different process for me. And I don't know that I necessarily have a process. It's like whatever the project I'm working on demands. All of the books that I've written have been so vastly different in different ways that, and you too, I know, because you've like jumped genres. It's just messy, and I hate writing. I do though, I'm not kidding. I think I'm like, I'm dying inside. I hate writing, but I love revising. So it's like torture for me to get words on the page. I have to write by hand for the most part because it's so hard for me to write.
She has a picture on Instagram.
I just
follow her on
picture,
Instagram and it shows like her journal.
Picture.
And she's not shitting you. She actually writes shit by hand.
I go through notebook after notebook. I've like thought about this when, the apocalypse comes and future archaeologists are going through my house. I'm like, what are they gonna read? So ever since I was a child, I've thought this way, guys. I like censor my own diaries. My whole life so that when the future archaeologists read it, they're not like, well, she was crazy. They're just like, oh, well, here's the pertinent information about her day-to-day life. I can break apart what she did. Now we know what people of 2016 were doing.
When they find line diaries, it's just going to be like beautiful notebooks that the first 5 pages have something, and then the next 100 are blank.
Yeah, so I write a lot by hand because I have found that is the only way I can turn on an internal editor. You cannot change what you have written. It's in pen. And I also power through, and I don't have Twitter. I can't be distracted. I just am forced to write, and so that has sort of worked well-ish for me. And then I type all those words in, and then I print them out, and it is incohesive. There are holes, characters appear, they vanish, nothing makes any sense, and the writing is horrible.
How long is that? Like your handwritten draft, is that a full, complete, like 90,000 words?
No, because I stopped, especially with this latest book. I find sequels to be significantly harder than first books in a series. First books in a series are like, I can do whatever I want, consequences be damned. And then you're like, book 2, you're like, consequences be damned. What did I do? So that's what I'm dealing with now. As I said on my last panel, which was about world building, I'm a gamer, and so when I build a world, I build a world. And when I made the Truth Witch world, I was like, oh, I'm gonna make it like RPG-sized scope. And I made it, and then later it occured to me oh yeah, Dragon Age has 400 writers on it. I'm just me. No wonder my brain is literally collapsing under the weight of this book. But that's been a really big struggle with this current book, and so I will write a scene or two as far as I think I can get with what I know, and then I'll type that in, and then this book has been an endless slog of going forward, it being wrong, like you said, Mary Elizabeth, and then going back and then starting over and over and over and over again for 2 years now, until finally, somehow, all those missteps led me to the right story. And so now, I'm like writing it by hand. I'm doing it by point of view, because I have 5 points of view, so I'm writing one person's point of view, and then I'll do another one. So that takes me like a few weeks. I write, and then I type it in. Typing it is the worst part of it, because my wrists hate me, and you just go all day, and you're like, this is so boring. I have tried dictation, it doesn't work, especially with a fantasy book.
Or Southern accent.
Or a Southern accent. I know, and I was like, I have tried so hard to do this dictation thing, and they're like, pretend you're a news anchor, and so enunciate your words very well. And I'm like, nope, still doesn't work.
I tried it when I was knocked up, because I was like, maybe I can do dictation.
You were knocked up? Is that what you said?
Yeah. So I was like, I could do dictation while I was breastfeeding, and then like hands and like boobs and whatever. And like all that happened was like apparently my accent, especially because I'll get involved in it, and then my accent gets a little bit longer, and like single syllable words turn into like 3 syllables, and dragons would just like, what the hell are you saying? Like, it was just gibberish.
I spent more time like fixing what I just wrote, but I'll never forget it. I'm just going to continue doing this awful typing in. And that takes a few days of just typing, which is so boring and mindless. But then it's done, and then I print it all out, and then the real fun begins for me, because then it's like a big puzzle piece. And I wish I brought it with me. I'm so stupid, but you can kind of see the picture on Instagram. I will just like pull everything I've written and rearrange it. I do it all by hand. It's like one giant, massive, messy puzzle. Because usually, like, all the pieces are there in some form, and now I just have to put them in the order they were meant to be in all along. And then fill in any gaps. And so, for me, like, I have a background in science, and so I feel like that's my left brain coming to life, you know, and I can do that. So that's my favorite part, and that's usually, I will just keep doing that, and then I'll type all of that in, and then print it out and redo until it is done. And it takes forever, and it's messy, and everyone's like, why would you do this to yourself? But I cannot figure out another way to make my brain work.
There's literally nothing about what you said that I can emulate.
Yeah.
Literally nothing.
But trust me, I wish it was different. It's so time consuming, and when your editor is like, what are you doing? Where's the book? You really, and I read, like, I have tried a billion methods. I've tried, you know, I like obsessively read books about writing, hoping for that magic bullet that will save me from myself. But, I have yet to find it. This is the way my stupid brain wants to work. That is the way the creativity happens for me, so, all right.
Wow.
And you're all like, I do not want to come to this panel now.
I'm way more basic, I guess. It's different for every book, but something I have used that I recommend, if it works for you, because different things work. I actually tried I did use your print out the book and your sheets version, and it was great, but it was too detail-oriented for me. She has amazing resources on her website.
SusanDennard.com.
I used it to revise my first book. What I discovered is I do note cards. I'll take an edit letter, or I'll do my own edit letter. I know what I want to fix. Make a card from each problem, and I put at the top kind of what the problem is. I figure out what page-ish or scene where the thing is that I have to fix. I use Scrivener, so there really aren't page numbers, but I'll be like, scene with party or whatever. And then I write what I think the solution is. And I just write all these cards, and I like to revise on order. And so it's really daunting to tackle a revision where you're like, I have to revise this entire book. So depending on how I feel, my mood on the day, when I'm drinking and eating, I'll just be like, I'm gonna work on foreshadowing this mystery that I really screwed up. And I pick the card and I go to the place and I fix it and the breadcrumbs, and then the thing is done and I can work on the other things. And I tackle them out of order, in order of difficulty. Sometimes it's like, I'm just going to fix this one scene that's terrible today, and then I'll do the thing that's going to cause ripples when I have coffee and time. And so it depends. Though with my current book, everything I have to change is a ripple foreshadowing thing, so I'm actually doing a linear edit. I just started at the beginning, got to the first point where I had to add a character and foreshadow a mystery that showed up on page like 250. And I've just been working through my ripples. So that's working for this book. But the note card thing works for me. And Scrivener makes it easy because you can drag and drop move things around too, so.
Y'all are all weird.
I know. And so we're all weird and you have to figure out your own process, but sometimes like, I want to try yours someday because you've talked about it. I'm like, that is such a brilliant revision process.
It's just too.
I know, but I should try it. But summarizing each scene, I'm really lazy and I don't want to do it, so.
Well, also, like, it is hugely important for me to always be chronological. Like, I edit chronologically, I write chronologically. That's, like, there's no jumping around. That's not the order. Yeah. Y'all are weird.
So this is really eye-opening. I'm really kind of sad that you guys are deleting your like happy, good comments because
I do not delete my comments.
I read them over,
but I know why you do.
Yeah, I mean, usually like that's the fun part of like revisions is I'm telling them like this is amazing, this is why your book is amazing, this is why I signed you, this is why I love working with you, and I'm like that's my like opportunity to like.
I don't believe it. I'm still thinking.
I don't believe you.
I'm waiting for you to realize that like I'm a horrible writer.
No one would like go into that in depth of a revision with you unless they love you. Just letting that.
Or unless they've contracted you and they're
That too. Agents usually it's because we also love you. At least I do. So I've been kind of told that I'm a little different in that I'm very editorially heavy with my clients. I actually do a lot of R&Rs with potential clients, meaning I haven't even signed them yet. And
R&R is revise or submit.
Yes, so in case anyone who doesn't know what R&R means, it's basically when you query me, I either requested a partial or a full manuscript. I saw some like issues or concerns I had about it, but I was feeling very excited about the overall premise and the writing and the voice, so I send back notes and ask you to revise and then resubmit to me to let me consider again a second time. Some agents may ask an exclusive R&R. The thing about exclusivity to me is that I usually tell people don't give exclusivity unless you feel really like this is your dream agent or you really like feel like this agent gets your vision. Like if you feel comfortable with it, give it. Don't feel obliged to give it. I actually don't ask for exclusive R&Rs anymore because I honestly think it's to the benefit of the writers to query widely, and there's no guarantee after an R&R that the agent is going to offer. There's been times where I've asked for an R&R, they came back, and I still passed. So in that case, I just to put that out there are two different types of R&Rs that happen. But when an agent asks for an R&R, that's really exciting, honestly. I usually don't offer into at least one R&R with most of my clients. And I think this is where I differ with most agents who actually sign and then revise. I'm just like, no, let's just do some work together first as like a trial basis.
See.
And like, see if
an important skill.
Yeah, so I'm super selective with my client list, and so I really, when I take you on or when I make an offer to sign with you, I really want to make sure that we're a good fit, that we have shared the same vision. I've had experiences where I've asked for an R&R, I loved it, but the author and I, after talking, realized we didn't have the same vision for the book, and that was totally okay. So it didn't work out, but the fact that we had that chance to kind of see if we jive or not was really important to me. After I sign with my clients, I usually do more like revisions with them. So I'm probably like, if you're afraid of revisions, I'm probably not the agent for you. Just FYI, because I'm one of those agents who, I think it's for the benefit of your book, especially if I work a lot with debut authors, and I feel like this is your debut, this is your first impression with editors. If I see an issue, I don't ignore it. I tell you, like, this is why I think it doesn't work, this is my suggestion, and we usually talk about it. And sometimes, I don't mind if an author has a clear vision and they don't want to make a change, but I usually tell them why I think they should change so and so. Or let's talk about how to keep whatever they want, but to make it either flow better or make it mesh with the story more organically, things like that. Because my job is to advocate for you, and I want you to show your best to the editors that I submit to. Because that is, it's your first impression with them, and I want it to be the best. How R&R works, or how revisions work with me, kind of differs by client and their own unique methods. For some, most of the time, in general, I do either a short edit letter, and then I always take notes as I read via track changes in the comments on Word doc. That's kind of why I mentioned like the happy good comments, because as I read, I get excited and I'm like, love this scene, or like, oh, this is so swoon-worthy. Like you nailed that kissing scene, more kissing. Like those are my comments as I read.
Definitely keep those. I'm just gonna say I say keep those in.
And also I feel like, you know, sometimes they do something really well somewhere and then they kind of lose it somewhere else. So it's like, go back to what you did here. Like I hope that's helpful.
It is
and
helpful.
Yes. So that's, I try my best to like put all of my genuine, honest opinions and expert advice down and my suggestions down. But it's really, in the end, I tell them this is their book. It's not going to be my name on the cover. I hope it's an acknowledgement. It's not my name on the cover, it's theirs. So they should be happy with the end product of whatever they decide to do. Yeah, usually, you know, sometimes some authors want to, after they take a look at my notes, they want to arrange a phone call. Sometimes I do that. Otherwise, they just kind of have at it. Sometimes they send it back to me in pieces to see if, like, hey, I know you were having a lot of trouble with this scene. How do you think of this direction? And I'm usually very hands-on in that, like, I do accept that. Again, each agent has their own different methods with their authors too. Some are just like, I want to wait until you're finished. I want to wait until it's like super, like, you have 5 beta readers read it before I even see it again. Things like that. It just kind of depends on the agent, and I think it's important that once you do, I think it depends on like between the relationship between you and your agent. Once you have like an interested agent, to when you have that call with them, ask them what their revision process is like, or what their editorial vision is like, because in the end, you want to have a lasting relationship with your agent. It's a good idea if you find that out sooner rather than later that you guys mesh or not.
Can I just add one thing to what you said? Because you were like, if you don't like revisions, don't query me. But like, if you don't like revisions, you're in the wrong industry. You gotta get used to it. It's part of the job, and you can't be a diva about it. And like, because you're not gonna get far. And like, I have heard cautionary tales of authors who are like so determined to stick to their, this is the integrity of my story, I refuse to change it. And it's like, okay, fine, we're going to cancel your book. So that does happen. You have to choose the hills you want to die on, and it should not be revisions.
So I would love to know, I feel like each of you has either completely rewritten your book or rewritten significant portions. Can you talk about the mental process of that like how you push through? Because essentially it's a fresh write. It's a revision, but it's a fresh write. And then when we come to you, Thao, I want to know how you handle a client who wants to completely rewrite a book, which I know has happened with like Roshni. And like, I feel like
that was Roshni's choice to do it, right?
Yes.
Roshni was like, I'm going to do this,
yes.
And were you like, oh no?
But I'm wondering how it's different from writing a first draft. Or like throwing up being in your book and rewriting it completely for your editor or what have you.
I thought you said throwing up. I was like, that does feel like it.
I think it does sometimes when you're rewriting like that. You're just like writing another full draft. Like, I don't think it's different, except that you can mine some stuff from what went before.
Yes.
So it can be a little faster. But it does feel like you're starting over, so you have to say all the same questions, all the same doubts, like the doubts are still there. And another thing that kind of surprised me going into revisions the first time is that even when you revise and you're trying to make it better, you still can introduce a whole bunch of new errors and go completely the wrong direction. So, like, you know, when you see errors in finished books and you're like, how could they not catch that? It's probably because it was like a revised piece that was later on, like maybe in copy edits or something.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I just throw like in Truth, which I hate this so much, but I can't change it. They won't let me change it. There's like a sentence that clearly was meant to be cut, so it's almost identical to the sentence before it. Only almost, but I could tell it was probably something in copy edits that I cut, but it never got made.
Yeah, no, red lines, sometimes there's a mistake with red lines and how that works. Yeah, it's like...
And it kills me.
Yeah, me too.
Because it looks like bad writing, and it's not. It's just a mistake.
That is for my books, I don't know, because once they're published, I'm out.
I know, because people love to email me and tell me.
Yes, that could be too.
I'm shocked that anyone even noticed.
Oh, yes. I got to you about that one. Like, this is not you're echoing yourself. And I was like, it was an accident. It's like on page, I think it's like page 83 or something. Because I asked, I was like, can we please change this? And they're like, like, we can't because it'll affect the whole typesetting, we can't do that, and blah, blah, blah. But it's like, it says something about the tightness of the bodice. So that one phrase is repeated twice. The tightness of the bodice emphasized blah, blah, blah. And then the tightness of the bodice emphasized blah, blah, blah. And I was like, no. I'm not, I am a terrible writer. It's not intentional.
Yeah.
You just want to emphasize how tight that bodice was.
That's pretty much, exactly it. Is that sometimes it feels like rewriting, or just writing a whole new draft with all the same doubts and all the same, oh my god, am I going to go in the completely wrong direction and have to rewrite again? No! But it's a risk, and it's, you just have to have courage. That's the hard part, I think, of revision, is having the courage to change something you already did and be wrong again. And that's, if you have the courage to do that, then you're a writer.
So, further emphasizing that we are entirely opposite. I love the writing process, and as I'm writing, I think it's the most brilliant thing I've ever written ever. You say that now. But the writing process I adore, and I just think everything's brilliant, and the revision process is where I realize that I'm kind of an idiot and mess everything up. So I tackle, the writing process is fun and it's creative and I'm happy. And that's the opposite of what the revision process is for me. So I tackle it very strategically because I want to get it over with as soon as possible. I use Scrivener as well, and what I do is I use the split screen function. And I have the old draft on top and a new draft on bottom, and each individual file is a chapter. I split my book up by chapters, not by scenes. And so I'll put the old chapter up, or if I need to write a completely new chapter, nothing, but I do the split screen the whole way through, and I salvage what I can and just copy and paste and pull it out. And then I have each draft within the same file of Scrivener. So for the current, and they're labeled by month because I learned I can't label anything final draft because it's never final draft. So they're labeled by month and year. And the current book I'm writing now, which is a pretty big fantasy novel, it has, March of 2015, and now I'm all the way now. So there's all the different drafts, and I mine those drafts, and sometimes I go back to way old drafts because I'm like, oh, I went in a different direction, but I want to do that now. And that's how I get the final book. And I'll even put in the edit letter and all correspondence, anything dealing with that book goes in that Scrivener file, so that I can easily access it and just, I'm using my hands a lot because I'm thinking about the folder. I am, I'm there's a folder here and the one here. Yeah, so that's how I do it. I use the split screen function a lot. If I'm really struggling with something and have struggled with it for a long time, I shift the type of writing. So I don't really like handwriting, but if I get stuck drafting, I'll handwrite a scene. And then I hate handwriting so much that I go to the computer. And then when I'm editing, I will print the manuscript paper with a red pen. It makes a huge difference. And then if I have to do it again, I switch the font into a different font that doesn't look anything like it. And it makes me see the words and not, I catch that also. Yeah.
Reading on an e-reader instead of in print. Just switching up the way that you're consuming it.
Right.
Yeah, reading out loud is also huge.
I never read out loud because it's weird. I'm sitting on my couch reading and I'm like, eh? Even if no one's in the house, I'm just like, this is awkward.
See, I feel like I should emphasize my crazy method that I was describing earlier. That's how I get out the first draft. So the actual revisions is far more organized and not so messy and more like what you guys do. And I have my plan of attack and I adjust my big picture questions because now I've figured out the story. And so then it's a matter of going through problem by problem, scene by scene, and addressing those. Just to figure out the story is where I have my crazy, maddening, insanity method. Because it's very hard for me to figure out the story, particularly the more complex the story, the more characters involved. But yeah, what was the question?
About rewriting your book. But honestly, I was going to ask about when you get stuck, and it's kind of been incorporated. So what do you do when you get stuck on a revision? That's kind of said. You change up your method. Do you have any natural
stuck on a revision?
Other than crying.
Other than crying.
I'll ask my
GT partner. I'll brainstorm with somebody over GChat.
Oh yeah, I forgot.
Alexa. She's one of my critique partners.
I do that too.
Yeah.
I torture my critique partners in GChat where need to say things out loud. I don't actually want their input. It's kind of bad. I do this drafting too, where I'm like asking questions, and then I answer them. I'm like, okay, I figured it out. Bye.
I do that too. I think that's very valid.
It helps.
I've tried that, like with my dogs. I do like, Asimov. Let me. I'm really stuck here, and I'll just talk it out loud, and like it kind of works. I do. I'm a person who kind of prompts you with questions, but it kind of works.
Yeah.
When I'm drafting, I call it going invisible, and I have these noise canceling headphones, and I pretend like I'm invisible and nobody can see me, including my husband. So like, I just put the headphones on, and I'm like, but when I get stuck, if it's drafting or whatever, I'll like pop one ear off of the headphone, and I'll just talk at my husband, and he'll sometimes give me feedback, but sometimes it gives me an idea and starts going in the wrong direction, so I'm super rude. I just put the headphones back on. Fortunately, he understands. He's like, okay.
And also, whether I'm drafting or revising, I will take a shower because I think really well in the shower. I feel like I totally do.
It's because you can't do anything else.
I have my best ideas in the shower.
You can't do anything, but it's like driving. I have a lot of
driving
good ideas
too.
driving.
Yes,
it works.
Taking a walk is
You can't
good
do
too.
anything else. Yeah.
And on the flip side of that, if it's going really well, I just don't shower.
No.
Or like a week. And then there'll be a point when I'm like putting my hair up and I'm like,
If your hair hurts is when you know it's been too long.
or when your hair is really just like one clump. Writers are worse.
We just have different priorities.
Yeah.
Do you want to throw an age perspective on either question? Rewriting, stuck?
So yeah, for rewriting, you brought up Roshni. I wish it was kind of cute because then she can talk about it. I think she's talking about imaginary boyfriends right
She
now.
is.
I want to talk about imaginary boyfriends. So for like rewriting, in that case, it was kind of her choice, and I was actually really excited about it because she can be a really fresh writer, and I think it depends on where you're at during the submission process, where it's not disruptive to the submission process, and in her case it wasn't. It was actually very beneficial for it. It was like right before we started another round, and it actually generated a lot of excitement, and it was actually a partial of her rewritten pages that gained us basically a bidding war. So I'm not gonna, she isn't like, that's not a normal kind of circumstance, that usually doesn't happen, but in her case it really worked out. And she, you know, her writing just, it was always really good, but the moment she changed or rewrote that, the beginning, it just sang like sirens and angels and harps. So yeah.
She says, like, I was on camera when she told the story too, like the reason she did it was because through the course of revising and doing it, she lost the original purpose of the story, why she set out to tell it. And so she made the choice to do justice to the story that she needed to start over.
Yeah.
It was the right choice.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the thing was that, you know, her story, even with the rewrite, it still maintained that heart, and I think it actually just revealed that heart even more, and which is why it works well. I had another scenario where I had a client who, a former client, but that's not the reason why this happened. But what happened was that I went on submission with the project. It was only a month in, and she decided she wanted to rewrite the whole story. So that was a bit more disruptive to the submission process, and that was a little bit more difficult. Usually I want my, you know, so I've made it a point to talk to my authors right before we go on submission. Like I usually am very responsive to my authors, and I try to make myself as transparent as possible. I tell them the exact day I'm going to go on submission or start pitching, and usually I let them know, like, you know, give it the weekend, give it a week if you need to, and let me know if you have any more changes you want to make to the manuscript, if you feel comfortable with me going out with this. And I feel like that kind of method has worked out so far, and I haven't had that issue again, because I think in the beginning there's nerves, and I think sometimes writers are just so anxious to go on submission, they're like, yes, do it, but then like they get hindsight regret, and like, no, there were so many things I wanted to change or go back, but like once it's on submission, it's kind of, it does like have a cycle, sort of a life of its own, sort of, that it needs to go through, and it's difficult to kind of stop like in the middle of the run. But yeah, I feel like as an agent, I'm trying to, you know, it's really helpful to kind of hear your side of the know, again, like my job is to help you and like show the world how awesome your writing is. So like any way I can like help aid that and like just to hear your perspective and make sure that you are happy with the book that's coming out, that's really awesome. And so I'm trying to, my method as an agent is just to talk to my authors and be as communicative as possible. Was there another question in there?
No, that was it.
No,
Okay, good job.
Yeah.
Good job.
That's another thing though, that if I get stuck, I will call my agent and ask her
yes.
what she thinks too.
Yeah.
Because sometimes she has a whole different perspective, being, you know, much more into like what's selling now and what's, you know, what editors are asking for. So that's another way I can get
I
on
usually actually brainstorm with my authors a little bit when we're starting on a new project and they haven't started writing yet. And then usually they give me like 2 to 3, sometimes even just one like idea, and then we talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that my agent has helped me with is when my editor gives me a suggestion or feedback that I don't quite get, because sometimes it just seems kind of arbitrary, she's able to answer why. Like, I was like, why do they want to make this change? And she's able to be like, oh, well, it would be more marketable, or it fits better with the genre trope, or something like that. And that's something I'm still learning as I go, because usually that requires like a phone call, and I hate phones a lot. And I can get my agent to text.
It's like I know I need to call my congressman, but I'll never do it. It's true, I'll email that guy, but I'm not calling. Can I just like say too, like on that point, you make a really good point of like sometimes when you're on the other side and you don't know why they want it a certain way. Like I am struggling so much with language. This book was due a year and a half ago, still not done. And they will not move the release date back. So I'm like in this place of such deep panic every day. I have an eye twitch in both eyes. And it's just like, this is my life right now. And so, but there's a reason why they won't push it back. And I know that reason, and I wish it wasn't there, but it is. And so it's like on me to get it done. This is a book too that I want to say, I turned it in. I wrote it and rewrote it a billion times trying to find the right story. I turned in a terrible draft last August and decided to throw it out and start over. I gave it to my editor, and like she got back to me about 2 weeks later and was like, okay, you know, you told me it was rough, but I think we can fix it. And I was like, no, we can't. I know you hate me right now, deeply, but the heart isn't there. This isn't right. I took the characters in a direction that I don't feel great about, and I'm sorry. I'm going to start over, and I'm really sorry. And now we're almost to a year after that, and I'm still working on this freaking book, having started and false started a billion freaking times. And it is horribly hard and frustrating, and I wish that there was like had a happy ending. I don't.
It will.
It will though. It will, because it's done.
Yeah, and what you said about finding the heart, that's
so important
key.
though, that's the key.
Yeah.
It's so important to me, like I'm stuck with this release date, and I will do everything in my power, but it's like, I can't put out a bad book that I feel is not the right book, and it's not right to my readers.
And I have found, because I have 10 novels that I did not publish before I got to the one that was publishable. And I got to the point where I was desperate for publication, and I would revise and revise and revise, and I had like a bazillion critique partners and was taking everything. And when it got to the point where I lost the heart, the book died. And it took me a while to realize that, because I was still like, no, it still has, no. Once my heart was gone out of the book was dead. And that's one reason why I have so many Trump novels, because I was trying to revise, and I revised to death, and I lost the heart. So, and the only solution is to start again. That's the only solution I've ever found.
It's so frustrating killing your darlings, but like at the same time, we were talking about something yesterday, everything blurs together, I don't know which. But it's not wasted, right? It's a stepping stone to the right story or the right draft. Like you had to write that to get to here, so.
Yeah.
So I would love to do some audience questions. Someone, anyone, anywhere? Or not.
Yes. I'm curious about the expected timelines for things. I hear a lot of, okay, this is where you're revising with the agent, and what's the turnaround expectation on average for that versus the once it's been, picked up by an editor.
Every house is different for one. I mean, and every editor is different. So like you'll wait like 6 months for your edit letter, and then it'll finally come, and they'll be like, hey, great, can you get that to me in 4 days? Yeah. And so and I'm not even exaggerating, that can happen. And so you don't know, and every book's going to be different. It's just what's happening in the editor's lap.
And you also have to be very clear on communication. For example, when I was writing The World Without You, I got knocked up. And I had an entirely different deadline that was not going to be moved. I had to talk a lot with my editor because they knew they had their own internal schedule of when they could give me things and everything, and they kept forgetting, because my publisher is a man, kept forgetting that this was not going to change. And it got to the point where I had to get my agent involved and be like, she needs to be able to finish her edits before she's literally giving birth. So it is important to talk to your editor, and they can have some flexibility, like if you had something big like that. And it also depends on the project, because I'm working on a project with a different publisher that I can't speak much about, but that timeline is incredibly short. And so they knew from the start, they're like, you will have exactly this number of days to write and this number of days to revise. And so and we have worked with the publisher, and I know that in the month of September, my calendar will be cleared and my ass will not leave the couch.
Yeah. I can say, from my perspective, my book I think is pretty typical. It was like an 18-month lead time from when they purchased it to when it was supposed to be released. And so for me, my editor was like, yeah, I'll get you the edit letter in a month after she bought it. 6 months later, I finally got the edit letter.
That's so typical.
Yeah. She was just like, every month, I haven't got to it quite yet. And then
They're busy.
They're very busy. They have lots of stuff going on. Anyway, so then when she did, she gave me about a month to do the development. And then the line edit, I think, was like 2 to 3 weeks. And copy edits was like 1 week, which I was like, you have got to be kidding me.
That's
like,
kind of generous.
Well,
for
and
someone.
I know.
You have a full-time
Oh,
job.
that's so generous. I had to do a 24-hour copy edit turnaround. I'm not even talking it wasn't even a full 24 hours. I had to be done by the end of the day. And ready to pick it up, copy in the morning, by the end of the day.
I think this is like what they aim for generally.
Yeah, that's
like
what they
very
aim for.
generally. But sometimes they'll like crash a book, and that means that it has to go out like that, and it has to do with like their lines, when they're releasing books and stuff. And if they crash a book, it is not really a good thing, because it's really, really hard on you. But they try to take they try really hard to take into account your life. Like, I work full time. This is not my full time gig. So they tried. My editor tried to work with me on that, which was awesome.
And I've also found, Sandra Mitchell told me this trick, that however much time you have between now and the deadline, if you can't make it, you can ask for that time over again. So if your book is due in a week, you can ask for it to be extended by an extra week, and you're not going to mess too much stuff up. So that's been my rule of thumb. Like, if copy edits were due in a day, I'll ask for like 1 extra day if I need it. But if I've got a month, you can ask for like an extra month. So.
Or a year and a
I mean,
half.
that's not like a hard that's not a hard and fast rule. So when you get a book deal, be like, well, Beth said that I can have it. But like working with timelines and schedules, like however much time you have, which means if you know you're gonna have like a baby come out, you can like ask for that time ahead of time.
Yeah.
And then I can tell you on the agent side, because I'm still in the agent and going on submission phase. I just had a conversation. I was like, when do you see this going on submission? And I like deadlines a lot. And I usually revise fast when I was time because convention. And that gives, she'll tell me, and I'll be like, okay, we're gonna target. I personally like to do 3 to 4 weeks for a full book revision, because otherwise I will procrastinate for the rest of the time. And then we just agree, and it usually pushes by a little while. So like when you're at the agented stage and it's not like a production deadline, it can be a lot more flexible. And if you need 3 months, you can take 3 months. But I like short revisions.
Yeah, as an agent, I tend to be pretty flexible when I'm with my client, because I want them to have the best book out there instead of a rush book. And in terms of going on submission, it's a bit more flexible type of scheduling. When you're actually contracted, then there's actually a publishing schedule and how you're fitted in with other book publications and things like that to take in account of. But like they've said, your agent should get involved if you have like a life-changing situation or something where it's going to delay the book, because that's our job to try and get you an amended delivery date. And that's what we will fight for you if you need it. Because we also want the book to be, you to be happy writing this book and not just be like, oh my God, Donne's here, here's some trash.
Yeah.
At the same time, once we get you that amended delivery date, you can bet your ass we will be on top of you going like, are you writing? Why do I see you on Twitter?
We have time for like one more question. I'm so sorry, but there's not a lot of time.
You mentioned copy editing and then file editing. What's the difference between the two? I mean, I feel like they all have the same idea, but if you separate them, is it just your focus, or like what's the difference?
First, you get an edit letter, which is like the big picture, the holistic book kind of thing, and then the line edit is a prose level where they go line by line of your manuscript, and sometimes it's make this paragraph more succinct, or you could write this better.
Or just going a typonic.
And then copy edit is basically like grammar and consistency.
Yeah,
consistency is big.
If you write like a historical or something too, like when I have to do my 24-hour copy edits, the woman, bless her heart, missed it, got my dates, the year my book was set mixed up, so she thought it was 1867, so she, and it was 76, so she like marked every single thing in there as wrong and not existent yet. And I was like, no, because you've got the year wrong, and you have to step everyone. And I'm like, go Susan, go, step, because blah blah blah. And step, that means leave it as it stands. Yeah, let it stand. And so that was crazy.
Yeah.
I can't ever do that again. But I was like, I wanted to strangle that poor woman who got it wrong.
I kind of want to punch her.
Wow. So, but then if you write historical, they also will hopefully do like facts and fact checking and things like that.
All right, thank you very
Yeah,
much
thanks
for
for
coming.